Most gardeners either dump rice water straight onto their soil thinking it's magic, or they dismiss it completely as a useless kitchen myth. Both approaches miss the point. Used incorrectly, starch water can create sour, oxygen-starved soil and fungus gnat problems. Used correctly, it can stimulate microbial activity, improve soil structure, and increase nutrient cycling in ways that synthetic fertilizer alone never will. If you're serious about growing food that performs, not just survives, subscribe to the channel now. This is where we test things in real beds, real compost systems, and even hydro setups. Not theory, not trends. Let's get clear on what rice water actually does in soil. Rice water is not a fertilizer in the traditional sense. It doesn't deliver meaningful NPK levels that will push vegetative growth overnight. What it does is feed microbes. That cloudy rinse water is loaded with starches, small carbohydrates, and trace minerals. Those compounds are fast fuel for bacteria and certain fungi already present in your soil. And when microbes multiply, everything changes. Nutrient cycling accelerates. Organic matter breaks down more efficiently. Worms respond to increased microbial biomass. Roots interact with a more active soil food web. That's the mechanism. If you don't understand that, you'll misuse it. Here's exactly how I prepare starch water for garden use. When rinsing 1 cup of rice, I agitate it in about 2 cups of clean water for 30 to 45 seconds. The first rinse is the strongest. I strain that off and use it the same day. I don't store it for days unless I'm intentionally fermenting, which is a different discussion. For raised beds, I dilute that rinse into 4 gallons of dechlorinated water. That gives me a mild carbohydrate solution that won't overwhelm the soil. For a standard 4x8 raised bed, 5 gallons evenly applied to moist soil is more than enough. If your soil is dry, water lightly first. Then apply the starch water evenly across the surface. You want infiltration, not runoff. Raised beds respond faster than in-ground soil. In my raised vegetable beds, I've tested bi-weekly starch water applications during peak growing season. After about 3 weeks, I consistently see more visible worm castings on the surface in the mornings. Soil tilth improves. It crumbles more easily. Water penetrates better. The key is frequency and restraint. Once every 2 to 3 weeks is enough. Weekly applications can push bacterial dominance too far in certain soils, especially if organic matter levels are already high. In-ground gardens behave differently. Heavier soils need less frequent application. Sandy soils can benefit slightly more often, but still diluted properly. This is not a replacement for compost. One of the worst mistakes I see is gardeners thinking rice water replaces compost. It doesn't. Compost provides structure, stable organic matter, and a broad microbial community. Starch water simply feeds what's already there. In fact, rice water works best in soil that already has organic matter. If your soil is lifeless, compacted clay with no compost history, rice water alone won't fix that. Where this really shines is in compost systems. In active compost piles, a diluted starch solution can give a noticeable microbial boost. I use about 5 gallons of diluted rice water per cubic yard of compost material when rebuilding a turned pile that has cooled to around 110 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It often results in a moderate temperature rebound within 24 to 48 hours. And this is where measurement matters. Compost biology is temperature-driven. I monitor pile temperatures using a long-stem compost thermometer. The one I use is the RearTemp heavy-duty 36-inch compost thermometer. It's stainless steel, rugged, and long enough to reach the core of larger piles without guessing. If you're serious about compost quality and pathogen control, temperature isn't optional, it's essential. I'll leave the link in the description if you want to check it out. When you know your pile is in the active biological range, that's when starch inputs make sense. Dumping carbohydrates into a cold or already overheated pile doesn't help. Let's talk about worm bins, because this is where people overdo it. In vermicomposting systems, less is more. Worm bins can go anaerobic fast. For worm bins, I dilute much more aggressively. 1 cup of rice rinse water into 1 gallon of clean water. Then I lightly moisten cardboard bedding with that solution. I never pour directly onto a concentrated feeding zone. Within a day or two, worms cluster in treated areas because microbial films increase. But if you see worms climbing the walls trying to escape, you went too heavy. Hydroponic growers need to be careful. If you're running sterile hydroponics, don't add starch water to your reservoir. You'll clog lines and create biofilm issues. In biologically active systems, like cocoa with microbial inoculants, you can experiment cautiously. In cocoa-based systems, I've tested 1 tablespoon of diluted starch water per 5 gallons of nutrient solution once every 2 weeks. Results depend heavily on oxygenation and system cleanliness. This is not something you do blindly. Starch water improves soil structure over time. After a full season of moderate starch water use combined with compost mulch, I've noticed measurable improvements in aggregate stability in my beds. Soil clumps hold together better when moist and resist crusting when dry. That's a biological effect, not a chemical one. Microbes fed with simple carbohydrates multiply rapidly. When they die, their bodies become part of stable organic matter. Worms ingest that and deposit castings rich in plant-available nutrients and growth-promoting compounds. It's a cycle, but there are trade-offs. Too much starch means oxygen depletion. If your soil smells sour or swampy after application, you've overdone it. If fungus gnats spike, you likely created a surface-level bacterial bloom without adequate aeration. Timing matters too. Early spring, when soil temperatures consistently stay above 55 degrees Fahrenheit, is ideal. Mid-season during heavy fruiting can also be beneficial. In cold winter soil, starch water does very little because microbial activity is minimal. This works for more than just vegetables. I've applied diluted starch water to fruit trees, berry bushes, and even perennial herb beds. Around fruit trees, I apply 5 gallons of diluted solution evenly around the drip line, not at the trunk. For berry rows, 1 gallon per 10 linear feet works well. Houseplants can benefit too, but the dilution must be strong. 1 cup of rice rinse water diluted into 2 gallons of water is plenty. Apply sparingly and ensure good drainage. Let's correct another myth before it spreads. Rice water is not a miracle growth hormone. If your plants are nutrient deficient, starch water won't correct that. If your soil lacks minerals, you need minerals. If your pH is off, you fix pH. Starch water supports biology. It doesn't replace proper soil management. When you use it as part of a broader system, composting correctly, monitoring temperatures, maintaining aeration, building organic matter, you'll see consistent results. When you treat it like a magic potion, you'll be disappointed. The bigger picture is soil management. Every serious grower eventually realizes that feeding plants directly is less effective than feeding the system that feeds the plants. Starch water is simply one small tool in that system. Used intelligently, it increases microbial activity, encourages worm presence, improves soil aggregation, and supports long-term fertility. Used recklessly, it creates imbalance. If this kind of practical field-tested knowledge helps you grow better food, subscribe to the FarmLogic channel and share this video with another grower who wants results, not trends. The compost thermometer I mentioned is linked in the description if you want to start measuring instead of guessing. Better soil biology means stronger roots, more resilient plants, and better harvests. That's the goal, and that's what we focus on here.